Anoop, thank you so much for joining us today and welcome to Your Story Media.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's our pleasure. It's our pleasure, Anoop. So without wasting much time, let me ask you about one thing that I've been meaning to ask you about, which is your latest campaign, 23 in 23. You have also relaunched your Dil Se Open campaign in sign languages now. What was the thought behind that? Tell us a little bit more about this.
Sure. So thank you. It's a campaign that's very close to all our hearts here at Axis. But if I had to step back and think about it, over the last 18 months, we've kind of revamped our entire marketing strategy. And one of the key pillars as part of that marketing strategy is how we use social media, right? So we realized that big money spends like the Dil Se Open campaign that you mentioned come in once in a while, once a year, maximum 2 times a year. So it's very important for us to continue to have conversations with our consumers at large, right? And the best way to do it is by using social media to kind of transmit our point of view or our purpose to them, right? And our point of view at Axis Bank is that being open creates lasting value, right? And we want to use the bank as an institution to kind of further that point of view across the population. So there's one part of the marketing that's about selling more products and getting more profits, etc. But really, we do feel that we have a responsibility of trying to say a larger story, right? And we feel that we are in a position where we can use our voice to let consumers know about where we stand on different issues, and also maybe in some way, if we can, increase awareness about certain social issues, right? So 23 in 23 came out of that thought. And we basically used the occasion of Republic Day, where everybody is probably doing just a India kind of story, to shine a light on this particular issue. So that's where the genesis of it was. Of course, once you say something like that and you take a stand, consumers won't believe you if you don't do the same thing. So which is why we then went back to the Dil Se Open campaign and said, okay, we also realized we didn't think of it when we made that campaign. So how can we start making this good? So going forward for all our large campaigns, this is something that we intend to do and not, just keep it as a one-off.
Right. Wonderful. I think it's a brilliantly made campaign, no doubt about it. I think it invokes a lot of emotions in you while you're watching it. Certainly did for me when I was watching it. But, going back a little bit on your Dil Se Open campaign, very interestingly, I read somewhere in one of your interviews where you said that you actually also went to Axis Bank employees to understand the campaign a little bit more before actually launching it. Tell us a bit about that why did you actually feel the need to talk to your employees when the campaign was for the end consumer?
Right. It's a good question. So we are in a service industry, right? So I used to work in the FMCG industry where you controlled every variable of the product, right? So once it left your factory, you ensured that it had a certain quality, it got delivered. In the service industry, of course, there are every minute, like right now also probably there's a millions of our customers who need something, transacting with the bank or speaking to some of our employees. So our employees are one of the most important touch points of this business, right? Because they are the ones who are facing the consumer, either on the phone line, in the branch, or maybe it's a wholesale banking employee, right? So it is very important for us to know the pulse of the employee, understand the culture that they are operating in, because the advertising then has to reflect that culture. So when we say we are Dil Se Open, and when I earlier mentioned that our point of view is that being open creates lasting value, it's because that is something that's part of our DNA. So when this whole idea of positioning was conceptualized in 2020, when Amitabh came in as our CEO, it had to therefore come in from how we behaved on ground and what we believed in. And that's the idea. So Dil Se Open is about who we are, but we believe that if we are open, it helps consumers.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. I think it gives us a great insight into the culture and the ethos of Axis Bank. So thank you for sharing that once again. But talking about the marketing strategies, the banking sector is so cluttered, right? Everybody is trying to woo their consumer in some way or the other. And most of the times, it has an emotional connect. All the advertising from banking sector has an emotional connect with the consumers because I think that works best. Now, in this scenario, how does Axis Bank differentiate itself from other banks in the market? And what marketing strategies do you use to stand out in this space? And at the same time, of course, stay relevant?
Oh, fair. That's a very good question. And I think some of the things you said is right. You need to have an emotional connect, but everybody knows that, right? So there's enough research agencies telling you what to do
Yes.
to make your marketing more sharper. But our marketing thinking, like I mentioned before, is not just about products or the technologies that we deploy, right? It includes that indispensable human element. And we believe that over a period of time, like I said, we've spoken to our employees, that Dil Se Open is part of our DNA. And the big differentiator for us, if I may say so, versus the other banks, is that some of them are known for process, some of them are known for technology over the years. We want to be known for our human interface and that experience that the consumer can get from us. So it's not just a marketing strategy, it's a way in which we think that we can build a long-term bond with our customers, right? And you should all, I think that I should also say that we have about 40 million customers, but there are another 400 million who are not our customers, right? So one is what these 40 million people experience with us. And the second is letting the other 360 million knowing that this is who we are about, so that at any point in time, if they want a financial service, they know what products we have and who we are, basically, right? Because consumers nowadays make the choice on product or service that they want to go with basis on what they think of that brand, right? What they think of that corporation. So we really believe that our strength is that we are Dil Se Open.
Wow. I thank you for sharing that. I think you put it so beautifully. Like it's for Axis Bank, it's all about letting your consumers know who we are. I think that makes so much sense. Now, one thing I think that is of paramount in the banking sector is trust, because when I talk about it, like I look at the elderly people around me, they will just not change their bank. They will just not switch. Even if you tell them 1,000 times, okay, this bank is doing great service or that bank is doing great service, they will just not switch. It's all about trust that they have built over the years with that one specific bank of theirs. So how do you build this trust, and how do you ensure that your marketing message is ethical and transparent?
That's a very good question. So I think one of the things that you said is very true. We are not, especially for savings accounts, these are not things that people change every day, right? You might buy a credit card because a friend said it's great, and you might have 2 or 3 that you use. But a savings account is almost like a very personal choice you make. It's influenced a lot by family. It's influenced by friends, but our understanding is that it generally happens around life events. So if you think back about it, your first account is probably something that your dad asked you to open, right? And then you must have gone to college and maybe you had another account. And then you got a job, or you change your job, or you get married, right? So there are life events that usually affect your choice. So which is why I think the earlier point I made, and I know I might be repeating, one is about your consistency of message about who you are. People need to know that Axis Bank, you get great service, and you have a great human interface. But then, like I said, it kicks in the moment of truth of saying, when I make a transaction, it has to work. Or if I call up my RM, he has to respond. Right? So marketing is not limited to just the marketing team in Axis, and I'm sure it's like that for most of the BFSI industry. And that's a very important point as marketeers you need to understand. The trust comes because of the repeated interactions they're having with either our tech or our people, and how those repeated interactions are helping them either solve their problems or helping them on onboarding themselves into a new product. So there are so many moments of truth in the banking and the BFSI industry that that is how the trust is built. The trust is not, it will be supremely difficult to attract a new customer if they don't trust us, right? But it's not possible. I think I would be lying if I sat here and said that I, as a marketing head of Axis Bank, will be able to build trust. It comes from my 93,000 colleagues who are out there, who are doing this every day. That's how it's built. And really, like you said, this, right? And we've had this relationship for years. So we know, I can maybe quickly tell you an anecdote of a gentleman who comes into one of our Calcutta branches. He's a retired army official, and he's retired now. He's moved away from the location of our branch, but he comes in every day at 10 o'clock with the newspaper, sits there for 3 hours, reads the newspaper, says bye to everybody in the branch, and then goes back to his house. He lives alone now, right? But he has such a strong relationship, and that's what we try and build out when we talk about the bank. Slightly long answer to your question, but I hope I've answered it.
No, actually, it was so nice of you to share that anecdote because it is so important. And like I was saying, I know so many elderly who actually have that kind of relationship with their bank, that they will not, sometimes they will just go to the bank just because they know the teller there for so many years, or just because they know somebody else who's been working there and has helped them over the years over there. I think that is trust. And like you very rightly said, it is about your so many colleagues of yours who are out there who have put in so much effort in building that personal touch and that human relationship with your consumers. I think that's what matters the most. Now, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was also just going to add that similarly, your technology, right? So that's, let's say, maybe if you think of India's or age groups, right? For the younger generation, for like maybe people like you and me, younger people, your tech has to be so we've also got the highest rated mobile app in the world. And having that consistency, even technologically, is now the next frontier that we are developing the bank to be on, right? Because we recognize that consumers are changing and they always interact with the human. So how do you ensure that the technological interfaces are very, very powerful and strong too?
Right. So could you shed some more light on this about what technological transformations are you banking on now for the younger audiences?
So there's a lot of things. I don't know if I can answer it, but I'd like to focus on our app as one of the things that we have. So it's rated 4.8 on the Play Store and 4.6 on the iStore. And what we have is generally a very well designed app. We are very proud of it. And it's just one of those examples where we've invested in technology over the last few years so that that experience is seamless. We are also trying to integrate multiple things into it in terms of intuitiveness, thoughtfulness in the app itself. For example, as employees, we use the app, right? So whenever there's a credit in your account, the app almost kind of senses it and then tells you, would you like to invest this in an FD or something else? So those are the kind of things that we're working on. But more on that later. I think a lot of it is still in progress, and we'll talk about that.
Right.
Maybe in the next interview.
Waiting for that moment when I can talk to you about that.
Sure.
But, talking about, very interestingly, you mentioned younger audiences. And while scrolling through your social media pages, I realized that Axis Bank also has a very, very strong presence on social media, and particularly on Instagram. And that's very interesting for me because I would like to ask you, how is Axis Bank using this platform to connect with its younger audience, and what strategies have been most effective in driving engagement over here?
So I think first of all, my social media team is going to be very happy that you asked that question. Our strategy on social media is really defined by why the consumer is on that, on that platform, right? So we have a different strategy for, let's say, an Instagram versus what you will see if you scroll through our LinkedIn page.
Absolutely.
Now, for example, if you look at our content on Twitter, for example, that's more news-like. So we use that to let our customers know that this is what's happening at Axis. If you've launched a new product or if we have signed an MOU with the government, that's what you'll find there, because we feel that consumers are on Twitter for news-like content. Whereas the reason all of us, including, are on Instagram is because we want to engage with content. So the way we operate is that we want to create engaging content. And some of the content that you mentioned, the 23 and 23, was created because we felt that it'd be engaging on a platform like Instagram. I don't know if you've seen our latest Women's Day ad, because that was also created to create some engagement. But basically, our job on Instagram is to engage customers in such a way that we build a community over a period of time of people who are just there to come and see our product, right? And eventually, when they need a product, they might think of Axis Bank because they've seen all this content with us. So the idea is, like I said, in summary, different for each content piece and platform. And we're trying to create engagement on Instagram. But we're very glad that you like it.
Yeah. So, Anoop, now that we have spoken about the whole social media, the social media presence of Axis Bank, I would also like to ask you about the bank's marketing strategy to effectively reach and engage with customers in tier 2 and tier 3 cities of rural or even rural India, for that matter.
Absolutely. Good question. So we have a stated strategy of pursuing what we call Bharat Bank. It's almost like a division within the bank. And as you rightly said, the the way we approach it is very, very different there. So social media still works there, and so does traditional media like TV. But what we try and leverage is our presence there in those markets with our branches, the mandis that are there. So we do a lot of on-ground activation there, in addition to television communication and maybe radio communication that we go for those audiences.
Right. So, now there is a lot of digital penetration in these areas as well. So I would also like to ask you this here. We earlier spoke about building trust with your consumers, but one, I think, issue that most of us face is safe banking practices. A lot of us are so unaware of safe banking practices. So is financial literacy a part of your marketing strategy? And if yes, then can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. So I think give me a second. Sorry. So I think it is super important because in the financial sector, what happens is a lot of consumers don't know a lot of things, right? And they get scammed. So if you look at you mentioned Instagram earlier. If you look at 4 days back, we had actually done a contest with consumers on safe banking practices, right? And we announced a couple of winners 4 days back. You'll see that on our Instagram handle. So the idea is to engage with the audience and not just say this is how you be safe, but also get them to interact with you.
Right.
What we also do on social is that again, just giving an example, March 14th was Pi Day. You remember Pi, the number 3.14?
Yes.
Maths mein, which we, and so it was World Pi Day. Now,
wow.
It doesn't mean anything, but per se to a lot of people. But what we did is we used Pi Day on our social media to come and say, how can you use Pi to create a strong password, right? So you can use 3.P.1.I could be a strong password, right? So we try and engage with the audience in multiple ways to try and make safe banking one of the pillars of our social media strategy. So that's one. The second thing we do is that we actually, over a period of time, over the last 3-4 years, have partnered with enforcement agencies to create content. So we worked with the Mumbai police to create safe banking video. We worked with Gujarat police last March. So you can see some of that content. Last year, it was called In Choron Se Savdhan, which is the whole idea of telling the consumer that now these scams are faceless, right? They could call you for your OTP. They might call you for something else, but sometimes it's digital when you click on something. So instead of us saying it, we try and get the police to say it. So we work with them and then do that in their area. So it is a very, very important part of our marketing strategy. It's also important because, like I said, we want to be seen as a responsible institution, and it's our job to educate the customers.
Absolutely, because so many of us are so unaware of safe banking practices, especially the elderly as well, because most of them also deter from using digital banking services because they don't know how to go about it, or they don't know how to protect their accounts from scammers. I think so. Financial literacy has to take up at least a substantial chunk of the marketing strategy.
No, it does. And it's interesting that you mentioned that, because what we also do is, because of the exact thing that you said, a lot of elderly people, like our parents as well, right, are not very comfortable with technology. So just by putting it on Instagram and running that might not help them, it might be helping the young audience. So what we tend to do is we actually have workshops where we invite these people over and we actually tell them not just safe banking practices, but we try and teach them how to navigate, let's say, some other apps like a shopping app that you might need, like let's say an Amazon or Flipkart. How do you work with that? And then we also run safe banking practices for them. So it's generally very good because we get a lot of interaction from them and they feel like, oh, somebody's actually helping us with this. That's something we do as well as part of the marketing efforts.
Yes. I think that's very heartening to know that you have such initiatives as well. Now, we have spoken so much about marketing strategies, but when it comes to marketing financial products and services, I think it comes with its own set of challenges, right? So what are the challenges that you have faced and how did you overcome them?
So I think the biggest issue for a marketer in financial services is that you don't control all the variables, right? Like I was explaining before, it's a service. There are people delivering the service. they need to understand the product really well to be able to deliver that service properly. There are technological barriers, right? So the biggest challenge is that you're not in control of all the variables, and you still have to make a promise on behalf of the bank, right? So that I would think is the biggest challenge internally. And the more we get better at technology, the more we get better in our people processes and our safety processes within the bank, it makes my job as a banker, as a marketer, easier, right? So the more robust the bank is, the more easier my job is. The other journey, I think that the entire industry, including us as a bank, and we are for sure working on it, is this whole area of transparency. So compared to before, consumers know a lot more today than, let's say, 10 years back. They can compare products online. There's somebody giving them advice on which card to take or comparing different savings accounts. So we are dealing with a much, much more informed consumer. And if you have to make them your customer, you need to start also displaying that level of transparency and in your communication. I think that is something that we are on a journey on. I wouldn't say that we are 100% there yet, but that's something we recognize and we want to work towards.
Right. Thank you for being so honest with that answer. I think it takes a lot to admit that you're not in control and actually accept that. And, you have to be able to delegate tasks, and you have to be able to make sure that the person who's the end touch point with the consumer is also very well aware of what the bank stands for. Like you earlier said, who we are is more important to you. So Anoop, before we let you go, I have to ask you this. What are the marketing trends that you see in the BFSI sector in the near future? And in your journey, how have you seen the marketing landscape change, especially in the finance sector?
Right. So I think there's been a lot of change, and I'll answer your second question first.
Sure.
And the change is really driven in marketing because there's a shift in power between brand owners and consumers, right? So as the internet came along, before that, all of us as brand owners or marketers used to broadcast to the customer, who we used to refer to as an audience, right? Now what's happened is that the consumer can actually broadcast back to you, right? So it's not a one-way communication, it's two-way. And they're no longer audiences, right? So what, as a marketer, you need to do is to start building communities. You need to start building a sense of who you are with that consumer, because he's no longer silently receiving your communication. For example, in the bank, if he's unhappy with the service that he's been given in a bank or a product that we have, they will let you know. They can put it out there on social media. Yes, of course, they can call us, but they can let the world know, right? So that's the big difference.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think that's a big shift for all marketers to make, not just in financial services, across consumer touch points. We need to be consistent about who we are, and we need to be able to take in what they're saying and try and moderate our message accordingly. So that's the big shift I see in marketing. The similar trend that's happened in the financial services industry is because there's a lot of technology. There are a lot of people who've come in and now can disrupt this market, right? So 20, 30 years back, it was just some few institutions. But now an entrepreneur can think, oh, I have a good idea, right? And we've seen examples of many of those come up in India where it's actually added to the entire sector. So UPI is a good example of where consumers, none of us had it like a few years back, but now everybody has it, and it's making a huge difference to our life to the extent that even rickshawalas in Bombay are using UPI, right? So it's created a shift in the way we operate, and we know this is going to continue to happen. So at Axis Bank, one of the things we do is that we actively partner with fintechs. We actually partner with technology partners to see, one, how can we improve our own technology internally? But second, how can we also spot opportunities that are happening in the market before maybe somebody else does?
Right.
What this results in is also, it makes the industry much more competitive. Like I think you mentioned before, there are about 3,500 banks advertising in India. Add to that, now there's an entire new sector of fintech that's advertising in India. So it makes the entire market much more competitive. Yes. But I do think this is another way in which the power is shifting towards the consumer.
Right. It's very interesting that you mentioned fintechs, because I think fintechs and banks started off as, they didn't start off as friends. Let's just put it that way. When did you see the shift in the mindset changing? Because now more and more banks are collaborating with fintechs, and like you mentioned that, so are you. So when did you see that shift in the mindset?
To be honest, I've been here 1.5 years. I've seen it happening all the time I'm here. But I think it's something that we've started doing 4 years in now. It's something that we realize that we can't be doing everything ourselves. And it's true about every industry today. It's not just financial services. They bring something to the table, we bring something to the table. And therefore, if you're doing something that's in consumer interest, you will both win. It's the way we see it.
Right. Anoop, thank you so much for taking out your time for us today and for this very honest, candid conversation, because I think we have got a great insight into how you think as a marketer and what Axis Bank stands for. And it's always good to know that the banks that you see all around us, how they think in terms of its consumers and consumer engagement as well. So thank you so much once again for this interview.